Today's lesson is called The Shocking Science Behind Static Electricity. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Roger. It's our science unit today, and we're talking about something called static electricity. It can be a hassle, it can be a nuisance when it sneaks up on you suddenly, unexpectedly. That's when you get a shock, basically, in your hand if you touch something metal.
Yeah, static electricity can be that. That's true. But how about when you rub a balloon on your head, and then when you lift that balloon, why is your hair sticking to that balloon? Or let's say you grab some clothes out of your dryer and you put them on, and oh no, the clothes are sticking to your skin like glue. Why is that happening? Well, that's because of static electricity. Now, static electricity is somewhat complicated, but I think that we can cover this and talk about the science behind it over the course of 2 days, and I think you guys will get something out of it as well. So let's go ahead and start learning about static electricity. The name of the article is The Shocking Science Behind Static Electricity.
The Shocking Science Behind Static Electricity. Why do we sometimes feel a tiny spark when we touch a doorknob or pick up a metal object? The answer is static electricity. To understand this phenomenon, remember that everything around us is made up of atoms, which have positively charged protons, negatively charged electrons, and neutral neutrons. Protons and electrons have equally sized charges, so they normally balance out and make objects electrically neutral. Sometimes, however, electrons can jump from one atom to another, especially when two surfaces rub against each other. When this happens, the first atom becomes positively charged because it has lost electrons, and the second becomes negatively charged.
大家好，第一部分我们看到的单字是 doorknob， 这个字是名词，指门把。例如 In the horror movie, the doorknob turned slowly and then the monster came into the room. 在恐怖片中，在门把慢慢地转动后，怪物进了房间。接着我们看到一个形容词 neutral， 指物理学中性的，不带电的。像是 The object has no electrical charge, so it's neutral. 这个物品没有充电，所以是不带电的。而 neutral 除了上述的意思之外，还可以用来形容中立的、中性的。我们可以说 Betty took a neutral stance on the upcoming election. Betty 对即将来临的选举抱持中立的立场。
Okay, it's time now to discuss the first part of our lesson. We're talking about the shocking science behind static electricity. So,
and by the way,
yeah,
I just got that earlier. You talked about how you can get a shock when you're experiencing static electricity, and now it says here that this is shocking science, huh?
Double entendre there, indeed. Shocking can mean a couple of things there. It can be very, very surprising. Oh, that was shocking news when I heard about the singer's affair. But here, shocking can also refer to electricity. When electricity comes in contact with you, you are shocked or you get an electric shock. So, interesting
like
title
bzz,
here, yeah.
Bzz, like when you get shocked, bzz,
shock, yes.
Zapped with some electricity.
Right, or you can get shock treatment, for example, although they don't really do that anymore. But in any case, this is the science behind static electricity. If you want to know how something works, we often talk about the science behind it. What is the scientific explanation for static electricity? Static, of course, just means something still. So in Chinese, static electricity is basically the same as the English 静电 static electricity.
There you go. So let's go ahead and get started. Our article begins with a question and then the answer to that question. Let's go ahead and read these two things right now. First of all, the question. Why do we sometimes feel a tiny spark when we touch a doorknob or pick up a metal object? Why? Here's the answer. Because static electricity, or I should say, the answer is static electricity. Now, before we move on and learn more about static electricity, we've got a word to talk about here, this word spark. Now, usually a spark is kind of like a small piece of fire, not a flame, smaller than that, okay? A spark is kind of like the smallest amount of fire or flame that you need to start a fire in some situations. Maybe if you want to start a fire out in nature, you take two stones together, two pieces of flint, and when you strike those pieces of flint together, you'll get sparks, and sometimes that's enough to get a fire started. But here, the word spark is being used in a slightly different way. Here, a spark is a small electrical charge, okay? It's just enough to give you a shock in some situations. Anyways, for example, you could say, the spark from the spark plug will ignite the gasoline.
Right, or the gasoline and air mixture in the combustion chamber, and it will drive your engine with a spark plug, basically. So yes, this is a tiny spark of electricity that we feel when we touch a doorknob, which is metal, of course, or when we pick up a metal object. If we bend down to pick up something that is made out of metal, sometimes we get this electric shock or this tiny spark. Yeah, that's the question. Why do we feel this sometimes? Well, the answer is static electricity. Enough said. Now, here in the next paragraph, it begins to explain what static electricity is. It says, to understand this phenomenon, remember that everything around us is made up of atoms, which have positively charged protons, negatively charged electrons, and neutral neutrons. So there's your basic chemistry lesson for today. It all starts with atoms, and this is the phenomenon of static electricity. A phenomenon, of course, is something that happens in nature. A typhoon is a natural phenomenon, for example.
There you go. Now, a couple of notes here. Usually, this word phenomenon is reserved for things that are kind of interesting or noteworthy or amazing, like a typhoon being a natural phenomenon, like Roger mentioned there. Now, further, the plural of this word phenomenon, technically it's phenomena. You end that word with an A. Anyways, yes, you've got positively charged protons, negatively charged electrons, and neutral neutrons. And yes, here we've got an atom. In the middle there, in the nucleus, you have your neutrons, and you've got your protons, and then orbiting around this nucleus, you have those electrons. That's what an atom is all about. Anyways, protons and electrons have equally sized charges, so they normally balance out and make objects electrically neutral. So for every positive charge, let's say, there's an offsetting negative charge, so that becomes neutral. There's no electrical charge if you have an electrically neutral atom. That's what we're talking about in this particular situation.
Indeed, so those are the parts of the atom there, and protons and electrons have equally sized charges, so they normally balance out and make objects electrically neutral. So that's very nice. They're balanced out. You've got positive here, you've got negative there, so they're neutral. They're neither one nor the other. And here the next sentence says, sometimes, however, electrons can jump from one atom to another, especially when two surfaces rub against each other. Again, this happens at an atomic level. We've got those electrons jumping from one atom to another for different reasons. And here we're talking about a specific reason. It's when two surfaces rub against each other. Then those electrons are jumping all over the place.
So earlier I talked about the structure of an atom. The protons and the neutrons are in the nucleus, whereas the electrons are orbiting around the nucleus. So when you rub two things together, the atoms of those two things are going to be rubbing together as well. But here's the thing. The nucleus there is in the center of every atom. So when you go ahead and rub things together, nothing's going to happen to the nucleus, okay? What's going to happen is going to happen to the electrons that are on the outside or which are orbiting around the nucleus. Yes, remember the electrons are on the outside of the atom, orbiting around the nucleus. So when you rub these two things together, it's the electrons that can jump from one atom to another as far as these two things that are rubbing together are concerned. And yes, when this happens, the first atom, let's say, okay, becomes positively charged because it has lost electrons. Before it was neutral, okay, that electron jumps ship, okay, so it's no longer neutral, it's going to be positive. Now, when that electron jumps to the other atom there's now an extra electron on that particular atom, which means that atom is going to now be negatively charged. Yes, when this happens, the first atom becomes positively charged because it has lost electrons, and the second becomes negatively charged.
Because it has gained an electron, and that basically explains static electricity, although there's more to it than that, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that in just a second here. Let's listen to the second part of our lesson right now.
But where does static electricity come in? Since atoms tend toward neutrality, the electrons of negatively charged atoms will jump onto positively charged atoms. The sudden spark you feel from static electricity is caused by this movement of electrons.
第二部分，我们看到一个片语 come in， 课文中代表起作用、发挥作用。举例来说 ，To have healthy skin, you need vitamin C, and that's where fruits come in. 你需要维他命 C， 皮肤才会健康，而那就是需要水果的地方。另外 come in 还有以下3个其他的意思。首先 come in 可以指产品上市，像是 The latest model will come in next week， 最新款式下星期会上市。再来 come in 有比赛获得名次之意，我们可以说 Due to his lack of practice, my son came in last in the race. 由于缺乏练习，我儿子在比赛中名次垫底。最后还可以用 come in 来指以点点点形式出现，所以可以说 This instant oatmeal comes in several different flavors, such as blueberry and brown sugar. 这款即食燕麦片有几种不同的口味，例如蓝莓和黑糖。
Okay, now the first part of our lesson started with the question, and the second part is going to start with a question as well. Here's the question, but where does static electricity come in? Good question. And by the way, we also have a phrase here to talk about, to come in. And no, we're not talking about welcoming someone into your house. Yes, yes, 进来, come in. No, no, no. Here when we ask, but where does static electricity come in? We're asking, hey, where does this apply? At which point does this matter? How does this factor into our discussion? So we've talked about atoms and protons and electrons and stuff like that. But hey, when are we going to start talking about static electricity? Where does the static electricity come in?
Exactly. Well, here it says, since atoms tend toward neutrality, or because they like to have things neutral, the electrons of negatively charged atoms will jump onto positively charged atoms. They want to even things out again because atoms want to have things neutral. They tend toward neutrality. Neutrality, of course, is the state or condition of being neutral, not being one or the other. Switzerland loves neutrality, for example. They don't like to take sides during wars. So yes, they like to be neutral here, just like Switzerland. Atoms like to be like Switzerland. And so the electrons of those negatively charged atoms jump over to the positively charged atoms to even things out again.
There you go. And let's go back a little bit. Sometimes you do rub things together and a magnetic effect kind of also happens, okay? Like earlier I talked about rubbing a balloon on your hair. All of a sudden your hair is stuck to that balloon. That's because temporarily the electrons from one thing have shifted to the other. So there's now a positive charge in one place and a negative charge in another. And what happens when you have a negative and a positive charge? Well, they attract one another. That's why your hair is sticking to that balloon. That's also an instance of static electricity in action. Anyways, back to this though, okay? Yes, atoms tend towards neutrality. So here, the electrons of negatively charged atoms are going to jump onto positively charged atoms. So the sudden spark you feel from static electricity is caused by this movement of electrons. Yes, you kind of feel an electric shock. That's electricity moving into you. You get zapped. That's just the movement of electrons.
Yep, how about that? That happens oftentimes, of course, if you walk across a floor covered with carpeting and then you touch the doorknob. For me, it always seems to happen when I go to家乐福and when I ride on the escalator, and if I stick my hand over too far and touch the metal underneath, I get an electric shock. So I suppose the science is working there of the escalator moving and causing those atoms to lose their electrons, etc., etc. So there you go. That's that sudden spark you feel. And that's caused by the movement of those electrons. Okay, let's move on now to the third and final part of our lesson for today. Hey, let's listen to it first.
Static electricity usually occurs when plastic, wool, rubber, or other insulators are involved. For example, electrons from your body can get on the wool or nylon carpet you're walking on, while the carpet retains its own electrons. Later, when you touch something that has loosely bound outer electrons, such as metal, ouch! Its electrons hop to your hand to replace the ones your body lost.
第三部分我们看到一个单字 retain， 这个字为动词，指保存、保留。像是 After so many years in foreign countries, Ingrid worried that her children would not retain their native language. 旅居国外多年后 Ingrid 担心她的小孩会无法保留母语。另外补充一个 retain 相关的片语，可以用 retain a foothold 或是 retain one's foothold 来表示维持立足点。我们可以说 It's becoming increasingly difficult for us to retain a foothold in the e-commerce sector. 要在电子商务领域维持立足点，对我们来说是越来越难了。最后我们看到形容词 bound， 在课文中指物理或化学连结的，但是 bound 除了上述的意思之外，还有以下两个比较常用的意思。首先 bound 可以指正在前往的，打算前去的。举例来说 The ship was bound for the Mediterranean when it ran aground. 那艘船往地中海航行途中搁浅了。另外还可以用 bound 来形容必然的、肯定的，可以用 be bound to 加动词来表示一定会点点点。所以我们可以说 Even if you fail the exam, you're still bound to pass the class, so you shouldn't worry so much. 就算你这个考试不及格，你还是一定会通过这堂课，所以你不需要太担心。
Okay, earlier Roger talked about walking along a carpet and stuff like that when he was explaining static electricity, and that's going to make its way into one of our examples in this part of the lesson. But before we get into that, let's learn some more about static electricity. Static electricity usually occurs when plastic, wool, rubber, or other insulators are involved. Now, before we move on here, let's go ahead and talk about this word involved. Static electricity usually occurs when these things are involved. That is, when these things come into play, when they're featured in something, or when they play a part in what is going on. For instance, you could say something like this. Things are not as simple as they seem. Many factors are involved.
Or I could say, Dick and Jane are really good friends and they hang out together a lot, but they're not romantically involved. They're not boyfriend and girlfriend, they're just common friends. So here, of course, we've got other insulators involved with the production of static electricity. We've got wool, plastic, rubber, or other insulators. Insulator, of course, is something that I guess keeps electricity in place. Like the rubber around a wire, that's an insulator. So these things, of course, bring about static electricity. Now, for example here, electrons from your body can get on the wool or nylon carpet you're walking on while the carpet retains its own electrons. So this is an example here. We've got electrons from your body, from the atoms in your body, I guess the atoms on your skin there, and those electrons, they get on the wool or nylon carpet you're walking on. So they'll get on the wool of the sweater you're wearing, or those negatively charged electrons from your body will stick to the nylon carpet. Carpet, I guess, sometimes is made out of nylon. And that, of course, will retain its own electrons. To retain means to simply keep something.
There you go. If you keep something, you retain that thing. That's all there is to it. A good example here is, even into old age, he was able to retain his sense of childlike wonder. Yes, very often, old people, they become bitter and they don't really care about what's going on around them anymore. But hey, this guy, he was able to stay kid-like well into old age. Well done, sir. Now, one note here, we're talking about wool or nylon carpet. Okay, nylon is not as simple to understand as wool. Yeah, when you go ahead and you cut the hair off a sheep, you get wool. Nylon, though, is synthetic. It is made in a lab. Yeah, nylon is a versatile polymer. It's kind of protein-like, but like I said before, it's synthetic. It's not natural. It's kind of made in a lab by chemists and stuff like that. Like my backpack is made out of nylon.
Right. Nylon, of course, sounds just like the Chinese transliteration of this word, so we don't need to spend much more time on this. But again, the carpet that is made out of nylon will keep or retain its own electrons. And later, when you touch something that has loosely bound outer electrons, such as metal, ouch! Its electrons hop to your hand to replace the ones your body lost. So yes, you've lost those electrons, and if you touch something that has them, then they jump onto you, and wow, that can be quite painful. You get a shock, ouch. Again, those electrons hop on your hand, or at least they go to the atoms in your hand to even things out again. So it has those loosely bound outer electrons. Bound here just means they're sticking to something, but they're not really tight there. They can be easily moved.
There you go. These are loosely bound outer electrons, so psst, they go from the doorknob to you, and you feel that shock. How cool. All right, folks, with that, it's time for us to say goodbye for now, but don't worry, the Chinese teacher is on her way.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分有一个句子是 To understand this phenomenon, remember that everything around us is made up of atoms which have positively charged protons, negatively charged electrons, and neutral neutrons. 要了解这个现象，记住我们周遭的一切都是由原子所组成的。它有带正电的质子，带负电的电子和中性的中子。好，这边帮同学们补充几个单字哦。Atom 是原子， Proton 是质子， Electron 是电子， Neutron 则是指中子。好，另外 charge 这个字当名词，它可以用来表达电荷。电荷有分成正电荷跟负电荷，我们是用 positive 跟 negative 来形容它的正负，所以 positive charge 表示正电荷， negative charge 表示负电荷。好，我们文中它用 charged 来形容带电的、带电荷的，所以 positively charged 就表示带正电的， negatively charged 表示带负电的。看完这些复杂的名词，我们来学简单的文法，你会突然觉得文法好可爱哦。好，课文用到一个句型叫 A be made up of B， 表示 A 是由 B 组成的。那这边帮同学整理一下片语动词 make up 的用法。第一种是表达组成、构成，那它有分成主动和被动两种用法。主动的话就是以部分为主词，部分 make up 整体。好，那被动的话是以整体为主词，整体 be made up of 加上部分。那像课文它就是用被动的用法。我们来造一个例句。The album is made up of 10 songs， 就是说这张专辑是由10首歌曲组成的。 好 ，make up 的第二个用法是指编造、虚构，像是编造个故事啊、编造谎言等等。那 make up 当这个意思解释时，它是及物用法。例如 ，The story wasn't real, he made it up。那个故事不是真的啊，是他编造的。好，那么第三种用法是表达凑足或是补齐，它可以用来表达弥补啊、补偿什么的缺失、什么的不足。好，那么 make up 在这边也是及物用法。例如 He tried to make up for his weaknesses by working extra hard。为了弥补自己的不足，他试着更加的努力。那么第四种用法是表达和好，在争执之后重修旧好。那么 make up 当这个意思解释的时候，它是不及物用法。例如Peter made up with his girlfriend yesterday. Peter 昨天他跟他的女朋友和好了。好，接着看到课文第三部分有一个单字叫 retain， 我们来学它的字首字根。Tain, T-A-I-N 这个字根呢，它有 hold 或是 keep 的意思，也就是说保留或是维持。那在 retain 这个字当中，字首 re 表示 back 往回，字根 tain 表示 hold 保留。hold back， 合在一起 hold back， 我们就可以想到 retain 它有保留保存的意思。顺便再来补充两个有相同字根的单字，第一个叫 detain， D-E-T-A-I-N。 好，它的字首第一表示离开， tain 表示保留。你把要离开的人事物强留下来，那就可以联想到 detain 它有拘留扣押的意思咯。好，那么另外一个单字是 sustain，S-U-S-T-A-I-N， 它的字首 S-U-S 表示在下方，那么 tain 表示维持。同学们可以试着联想，在下方维持着、支撑着，就像是在当后盾一样，所以 sustain 它有供养、维持、支持或是支撑的语义。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Spark.In 1752, Benjamin Franklin came up with his famous kite experiment, which collected electrical sparks from storm clouds. Phenomena. It's a common phenomenon for a rainbow to appear when the sun comes out after a rainstorm. Involved. Only 5 people were involved in the decision-making process. Nylon. This backpack is very light because it's made of nylon. Retain.Alice's apartment retains a warm temperature all year, even in winter. Bound. It requires a great deal of electricity to separate the tightly bound hydrogen and oxygen atoms that make up water.
Okay, everyone. With that, today's article is now complete. But, as always,We sure hope that you guys have enjoyed reading along with us. Anyways, I'm Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.